Hello and welcome to WeQ Part 3. If you missed Part 1 and 2, don't despair. You can find us on LinkedIn. Just Google or look for the company profile there of Expand UK Limited, and then you can catch up on that. But let's jump into what we have prepared here in Part 3. We are looking now at the generational element because it is WeQ and intergenerational collaboration. We know there are things that make us different and there are things that unite us, but different age groups actually bring different things to the table. And we hear it more and more that people are saying, you know what? My colleague came back to me and he said he was working with some younger people, and he shared that this guy came to him and said, you know what? I'm really struggling with some older people in the workplace in my team. And then he looked at him and he said, do you mean older people like me? Because my colleague is in his 50s and this guy was maybe in his 20s. And then he kind of, as my colleague said, got a bit cagey. And it is an interesting one because, yeah, we sometimes don't think about how old someone is because we get along with them. But sometimes it is very obvious that maybe the difference in views is also because of the different times we've been born into and what then has actually shaped us. So the definition of a generation is basically the totality of people of the same age group with similar social orientation and attitude to life. And that has to do with the so-called formative years, which you could, according to at least some research, put at the age of 0, basically year 1 on the planet, until you're 8. And I know that differs, but anyway, when you look at formative years, depending on when we're born, we have been born into life and then have our formative years at different times. And that means society has possibly changed. And when I think of my formative years, that was 60s, 70s, it's very different from what young people experience nowadays. So when I look at Generation Alpha, which is the generation that is now around about that age and a little bit older, they live in a completely different world, at least, in my book. And therefore, they are also influenced by completely different things. And that has an impact. So when you look at the differences or the generations, we have the baby boomers, we have Generation X, Y, Z, or the millennials, and the alpha I already talked about. And I'm actually just Generation X. And then, of course, we have alpha now, and before the baby boomers, there are the so-called traditionalists, but they're generally no longer in the working sector, as much as Generation Alpha is not quite there yet. So we're looking at 4 different generations actually working together, not necessarily in all teams reflected, but this is 4 generations currently somewhere in the workplace. And it can be quite interesting. So just look at where you are and then maybe think about the generational mix of your teams. And, in discussion with other people about this, we kind of figured, and that is kind of the case here and there, is that we often just grow old in organization together. Might be changing now, but when I look at my team here in the UK, our team of consultants, most of us are actually Generation X. And we definitely need some more younger and maybe even older people to complete us in a way. So why is this important? We're building a future together and different viewpoints help. And it is about understanding first, and then the rest will follow. Appreciation is not necessarily the next step to understanding, but in order to actually grow in trust, it has to do also with appreciation. And then there is no learning without trust, and we can't really add value as a team, continuously growing also in becoming better and adapting to changing circumstances. We can't really do that without understanding, appreciation, trust, learning. So yeah, that's why this is important, and understanding about differences, not just because we found it on the internet or we watched a video clip, but more in, okay, who are you? as in WeQ, okay? Be curious, be aware of what has influenced you and appreciate it, but then also look at other people and don't put them in boxes, but add, some awareness of that they might be different, or that maybe certain things they're saying or what they like and don't like might be connected to their formative years. And that can start an interesting conversation and add a different perspective to a world we live in together, and we work in together, and we shape together. Is it time to reflect what we just heard? There's 3 things. One is, again, start with the I, as we discussed in part 2. Which generation are you part of, and what were your formative years, and why do you think you see things the way you see them, or you value them the way you value them? But then also think about the others, and especially also on the positives, the highlights of, good experiences in working with or for other age groups. And that's what I would like to leave you with. And if you want to come back for more, I would be most happy. So maybe see you in part 4. Until then, goodbye.